I just want to make sure I don't push the wrong button. So that makes sure I don't press the wrong thing.
You switched it.
Okay, so just putting my hand on it won't do it.
No.
Okay. Because I was telling Zach when I did the e-bike, the blue bike, it took off. It scared the hell out of me, and I'm like, okay. So like, I don't need to go on Bull Street and hit the wrong thing and push it right out.
Yeah, it definitely surprised me the first time. But it kind of just once you get used to it, it's not so bad. But
how are you?
So what are some things that kind of keep in your neighborhood?
So the route.
Yeah, and like why you wouldn't go outside your neighborhood?
Well, typically I'm riding with my kids, and I talk about this all with safety. Until we get more facilities, I just don't feel like it's safe. And so I have a 4-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And so sometimes my 16-year-old will go a little bit more, like we'll come over to Cottontown and stuff. We don't really do Elmwood much because of the hills. And very ambitious, like years ago, before I had the 4-year-old and my kids were older and I wasn't taking them every day, I would try and I'd bike to work, which is right on Richland Street, and it's not far. So it was perfect, but then it was trying to find the best way to get downtown. So I started doing kind of coming over to Cottontown and doing Sumter Street. That was a little bit easier. And so again, with the kids, I don't typically try and cross North Main unless my husband's with me. And we can do like y'all have me, like front to back.
Yeah, North Main can get a little hairy. You quickly go from like this dense city environment to like, not so pedestrian friendly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and I remember, and this was years ago. I think we've gotten better. Well, and I say I think, y'all can tell me if it's gotten better, because you ride more than I do. But just teaching people the rules of the road, about sharing the road.
Yeah.
And so biking and people honking at me like I'm in their way.
Yeah, so you experienced that.
Oh yeah. So it's kind of like.
It got better, but we had some of that last week.
Did you?
Yeah.
One incident talking to the ride with Madura and
Daniel.
yes, Rick and Vin, yes.
And that's part of, just that education piece.
Right.
And, I talk about that a lot. It's like, I know sometimes people feel like we talk. But I do think, like, we have to educate people about things. I think Main Street has done a better job, with the signage and stuff, at making sure people understand, pedestrian and bicycle safety and who has the right of way.
Right.
But you still get it. And it's hard. And I don't know if that's better. My 16-year-old is now starting to drive. And so she's taking a driver's ed course. And it's just funny when I went over it with her. It's like, we should require people to go through some of this stuff before they actually renew their licenses, so some of these rules.
Yeah. For my driving school, my instructor brought me kind of out of the city, more on the country road and highway, and very little of it was let's drive through a city environment, 20 miles an hour, and just react to crosswalks and that sort of thing.
How do y'all like this new park? Green space area.
Pretty cool. Are there plans to kind of build more connections to the local area?
Yeah.
That's something that we really noticed is, until about a week ago, there was a literal wall.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that the wall came down, because I just think even the wall, yeah, exactly, that's exactly what I was going to say. Psychologically, it was just like a barrier and we've gotten a lot of pushback on you know, there's all this money in Bull Street. What about other areas? And I agree with that. But I want people to know that Bull Street is part of that connectivity to bringing the city together. The other part I'm excited about is that the Greenway will come all the way over here.
Yeah, will that be along the same line? I think it is. And basically goes from here to the river past the new school, the Trinidad school.
Yes. Right now, the design comes all the way up to North Main, and then there's a path to come over here, but we've got to connect it down to the river. It hasn't completely been connected to the river yet, but it will be. Oh, they've moved some of their equipment. I was out here the other week, and there were all this equipment. My daughter was like, "What are they doing?" So I was having to research like what exactly is happening. Yes. Well, Bob Hughes has been very receptive to that. Initially, I think he only thought that the park would be the big amenity. And then I think talking about how we continue that, again, connecting Bull Street to every place else so people don't feel like it's kind of this exclusive area in the middle. And then he's got, I don't know if y'all know Kevin Connolly, but he's a affordable housing developer. And Kevin's going to do a development here. And so all of Kevin's newer projects, he tries to connect to bike lanes and walking paths. And so I think the idea of how it all gets connected is a little bit, you know, people are seeing it now. Because, you know, I also, and I know y'all remember this, on Devine Street, at the corner of Devine and King, where that young man was killed.
Yeah.
My office was right there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's just, yeah, it's just understanding that people, I mean, we had someone killed, what, last year? It's just this, so that continues to be a fear for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be very conscious of my safety during this ride.
Oh, we're good. I've gotten over the fall, so I'm good.
Okay. I mean, speaking of instincts, I was very instinctual for you to go for the grass. Yeah.
And so, I don't know if y'all seen, do y'all know Gene Bell?
What was that?
Gene Bell?
I'm not familiar.
So Gene, he was on BPAC a few years ago, but he lives in my neighborhood and he works for, don't get me started, I want to say Watson Smith Taylor, but anyway, he's an architect.
Okay.
And a few years ago, I got to go to Copenhagen, and
Oh, wow, yeah.
of course, we biked everywhere.
Yeah.
And I believe it or not, honestly, when you think about the fear, I didn't have it there.
Right.
Because there were actually more bikes than cars.
Right, yeah.
So
And everybody rides.
it was totally different. It was that whole different atmosphere. And so, but one of the things that I loved about in Copenhagen was they have these bike parks where people can actually learn how to ride, learn the rules.
Oh, okay. Like in a closed space?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I came back and I shared like the pictures, and Zach, I don't know if you can hear me when I'm talking, but
Oh, I can hear you.
okay.
I'm just making sure my camera's
Oh, okay.
pointing at y'all as much as possible.
So we were, so Gene, because he's an architect, he kind of sketched out some kind of some schematics on how it could look.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And because we knew that we would eventually be able to get the property over there off of North Main, DOT property.
Okay.
He actually proposed that we do that there. And so going back to that kind of fear I have, I think is part of biking and having people, not just the honking, but seeing people killed and stuff. And I feel like there are a lot more people like me who would want to bike if we kind of made that comfort level with adding facilities, making sure we had protected bike lanes. And then making sure that we had places where people could learn. My 4-year-old is learning more now because his sisters love to ride. But my oldest, my 16-year-old, she didn't learn how to ride till she was probably 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And Sam's having a party.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that on his social media earlier. It's funny seeing him
Hi.
running into it.
Originally we were going to be at 1, and then he called me at like noon. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry. I looked at my schedule wrong. I got a cookout at 1. I'm like, that's cool. We can get to that.
All right.
So I guess that was it.
So this is where I need a little bit of boost, right? So Zach, I twist it.
Yeah. Gotta pull it back.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, I gotta say, this hill feels different the second time.
So even this is like one of the first areas we did Sheroes.
Yeah.
We were all excited, and this is the area where my dad grew up.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've got a lot of friends over here, that older folks, and they were like, "Why are you putting these in the street? People don't bike." And I'm like, "We've got 3 schools on this street." Yes, they do. And if they don't, we need to encourage them to bike.
Yeah.
So I think it was interesting now that, take this as opposed to the Fair Road fiasco. There were conversations with the community about why and the benefit. And they were like, okay, well, we're good with it.
Okay.
And so I feel like, I've said this a couple times, like people were like, if you had to do the Fair Road over again, what would you do differently? And honestly, I was the one that was like saying, y'all, yeah, DOT screwed up. City should have pushed DOT more to do some public engagement and awareness before. But once it was there, don't just take it up. Let's talk about how we can, get people to understand the benefit. And I think that was kind of a big loss.
Kind of what?
A big loss.
Yeah.
Because when you're thinking about, because even economic development, you're going to get places where people are biking and stores know, oh, somebody's going to be biking by here, and they might see, this. It's going to be a little bit, you're going to help create more of a demand.
Right.
Zach, are we turning or going straight?
Yeah, we're turning.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's see. Woo. Hello. Good. How are you? No problem.
So you feel safer on that
Here?
stretch
Oh,
right
yes.
there than Calhoun Street?
Yeah.
Would you feel safe taking your kids down that one?
Up here? Oh, yeah. Here people drive slower, and and they kind of used to it. Calhoun, we've done traffic calming, and we've got the bike lanes that are gonna come. But on Calhoun itself, especially that hill, number one, there's a natural progression because of the hill. When people are coming downhill, they speed up. But it also is just one of those streets that people use as a, like a raceway.
Yeah.
What do you think we should do to Calhoun to change that? the streets that are treated like raceways, like Calhoun, what are some steps that you think we can take to make them safer?
Well, I think it's definitely road diets. I think people use them as raceways because they can. Number one, there's not, the stop signs that stop people along the way. There's not, even when there's traffic enforcement, they know it's not going to be sustained traffic enforcement. And then, Calhoun it's not wide, but it's wider, and it gives people that disability. So I think we have to embrace traffic calming measures, but I also think that if there are particular streets that are throughways, getting people to understand that just because it's a throughway with no stop signs, you're probably not going to get a lot of lights. That's not a raceway.
Yeah.
I used to be more of a runner.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to admit, I like running more than I like biking. Just because I typically like to look around. So I like running.
Yeah.
And and Calhoun was like my major street that I ran on.
Right.
And even for a runner, I didn't feel safe. Even though I could, use the sidewalks where I, wanted, and it just didn't feel safe. So I honestly think that's a street that people don't necessarily feel safe unless you're in a car and running like crazy.
Are you okay with the distance I'm biking from you and stuff?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So Zach, you talked about having a crash. So what actually, is it the bike, is it the cars and stuff, or?
Yeah, so I've had 3 this year. And actually, a side note, you know April? Jones?
Yes, I love April.
Okay.
I love the
I was about to
article, her with
point
the baby
that
on the bike.
Yeah, one of mine, actually 2 of them, it was driving not stopping at a stop sign properly. And then the other one was my fault. I was yelling at a man who didn't stop at the stop sign. And I turned and yelled at him, and then when I turned back, I veered off, going into a light pole, broke my collarbone, and then never hurt.
Wow.
So, learned a lesson and kind of let some of this stuff go and staying calmer and staying alive is my destination.
I've been struck by vehicles 3 times in Colombia. And with each of those, an officer came and did a report. I showed up in traffic court for 2 of them and got a settlement out of one of them that I felt was the worst. And,
Settlement like in the traffic court, or did you have to sue them too?
basically my lawyer contacted their insurance company and said, look, we had it on camera. There's no really debating this. Like, this is, he kind of just took care of all that for me. So I don't think we had to take them to court, but my lawyer did have to contact them. And one of them, I was biking on Whaley back to the student housing I was at. And a car just out of the middle lane made a left turn and went right into the side of me, and it threw me about 15 feet.
Wow.
One time it was on Saluda, and a lady slammed on her brakes, and then I almost went to the back of her, managed to stop in time, and then she backed up onto me. There was no parking anywhere. For some reason, she just stopped and backed her car into me on the way.
Wow.
And another time I was biking down Hardin past the cookout in that shoulder or bike lane.
Oh,
and they clipped my back wheel. So now I've just formed the habit of taking the whole lane because cars are in and out of that lane.
Yeah.
It's about this big, actually.
So if y'all are thinking about like where's the best place to start with protected bike lanes, is it Assembly? Do you do Assembly?
I do if I'm going downhill. If I'm going uphill, I don't really have that speed to keep up with traffic. I don't know. I definitely have a few streets in mind, but nothing's like this street is the one. I mean, Sumter, perhaps.
So what are the, okay, Sumter.
Couple of things as far it's like a protected lane is great. It's not necessary for every context.
Yeah.
I think some places we can get very careful by
Like where?
so I'll give an example of my list. So rather than like if you have a protected lane on Sumter, maybe we went from Elwood to Hampton. But that'll cost a lot less time. But I'm not shaking.
Oh, me.
And I don't have a motor now.
Very out of shape. I run behind a 4-year-old, so you think I'd be more in shape, but no, I'm not.
Yeah, you also got that thing like Sumter, but if you go on one area on that street, it's already 80% penetration. So I feel like rather than doing a big project on one street, you could do smaller projects on a few others.
Yeah.
And get straight up and down. So, maybe like some photo filters with some flowers and planters, maybe while there. But then you can use that as a through street. But you can still maintain equal access and then also let the bike pedestrians go on through. As far as protected lanes, that's also something a lot of our streets are wide enough that we can easily maybe remove one of the travel lanes or parking lanes that's underutilized. That. And as far as where you really look at that connectivity.
So even kind of where you're talking about, it's interesting because, again, it's going to mindset. Like in Copenhagen, it was nothing for, 2 lanes to be bikers and then, 1 lane to be a car or something like that. I mean, it's just, we have a society that's just so used to cars.
Right.
And so that's why you get people, when you talk about the width of a lane and you talk about taking a piece off to make it a protected bike lane, there's plenty of room.
Yeah.
It's just that mentality of people like, no, I need the whole lane.
Also on Devine Street, I would say.
The Devine Street,
It is busier though.
yeah,
So,
but I thought there were already, I know there were some conversations about Devine Street.
Right.
Alright, you can turn right and then turn left right there.
Right, and then left
So
up the
I'm going to
hill.
go all the way across and get into that turn lane. That's Columbia.
I'm behind you, Zach. Okay. Woo! Uh-oh, if I can get over.
I got you.
There we go. Ah, sorry.
They were turning anyways.
I love this neighborhood, but it clearly has the right name. So my middle daughter used to be in a run club, and so one of her classmates lived over here, and of course during COVID they weren't doing organized runs, so he came over here. I caught myself running with these tiny, the then 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
They dusted me so bad. I was like, I can't at these hills.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly a child's body can adapt to physical activity.
I laugh and say, go ahead, baby, mommy's good.
What's that?
I had to go say, go ahead, baby, mommy's fine. I'll catch up.
I felt that way when I first joined a weightlifting club, sort of, and there were children and like 8-year-olds lifting more weight than me. A lot of it was because they had better technique, but I was like, wow, like, that's amazing.
So I like kind of this part of the route because how quickly Columbia can change.
Yeah.
What makes it another like that? How do you see like the infrastructure implementation tying into equity across the city?
So, I think you've heard me say this a little bit before, but like everything that I'm talking about is through a lens of equity, because I do think that when people understand the implementation of anything, whether it's an ordinance about parking in your front yard to investing in the sidewalks or bike ped infrastructure, if you understand it through a lens of equity, you see it not as, you know, oh, we've got to do this area, or this is the only area that quote wants it, but every area needs it. It just might be depending on how it's implemented. So I mean, I think first of all, sidewalks are big for me. We have so many neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, and we do currently. We prioritize which areas get the sidewalks, but I also think that the way the rating system is not really, it doesn't take into account equity. It looks at, you know, oh, do you have communities that are near schools and people walk to school? Well, you know, you have kids that walk to school in areas that, because their parents don't have cars, you also have kids who walk to school in neighborhood schools, and there's a lot more, not less neighborhood schools than there used to be. And
We're gonna go there.
Okay. So y'all hate this median. Ow. I'll put the brake on instead of going. My husband and I were over here today and we were talking about this median.
While we wait for this car.
And I was telling him, I said, I hate this median. I just feel like it divides.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Even when you're driving, it kind of gets in the way.
It could be used for traffic calming, but it wasn't. When it was proposed, it was not a traffic calming measure. It was more of a division. I said when it was proposed, it was not a traffic calming measure. It was division. Because I think, you know, you could have medians that help with traffic calming, bump outs and stuff like that, which are good. But this wasn't one of those. But anyway, I'm sorry, Zach. So go back to your question. So I think the way that we implement looking at just investing in the infrastructure for bike and pedestrian, we have to look in that in an equitable lens. And so even when you think about why some people don't walk or bike, a few years ago, Palmetto Health, Prisma now, but Palmetto Health did a survey, particularly in 29203, to understand some of the barriers to people getting out, being active, and things that they named were things like lack of sidewalks, stray dogs, not a lot of lighting, not feeling safe. And so when you think about those things and then actually align it with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, you know, those are things that would increase, you know, safety would increase if you got more people biking and walking. But if they don't feel safe, going back to my, you know, my fear, you know, we've got to make it safe. So I think that's kind of the way I see having it implemented. We have to look at citywide and prioritize. And of course, we've got the plan, so that gives us a basis. But even the walk bike plan needs to be, you know, broader in scope and hit us and hit some other areas. So, you know, I see myself having an opportunity to kind of look at everything and see, you know, where do we get the most bang for our buck, because that's where you stretch your dollars, but also looking at the reason that you're doing certain things and making sure that we're addressing it equitably. You know, when we had that conversation about Fair Road, I don't know, were either one of y'all in that big meeting that they had about it?
No.
Somebody wants to touch.
That was what, 2016?
Yeah, the part meeting about the bike lanes on Fair Road.
Yeah, I missed that one.
So that was at that meeting, there were some folks that I mean I know and I've known all my life that made comments about biking, because in their mind biking was more of a leisure activity for elite people versus a mode of transportation for people who don't have cars, a mode of transportation for people who actually want to get exercise or be better to the environment. You know, it's a lifestyle, and I really chalked it up more so again to it being, you know, a bigger conversation about multimodal transportation and people having the misperception that biking is for a certain group of people versus it's for anybody, but we have to increase access to it, and part of that increasing access is having safe spaces for people to bike. So, you know, when I think about equity, those are the kind of things, it's like just digging deeper on having those conversations and figuring out, you know, how do we find more of the commonalities and make sure that people understand the reasons that we want to make it more accessible and need to make it more accessible.
You mentioned about the different types of biking and recreation, and especially people that don't have access to vehicle. Where and to just that a minute ago through Pinehurst, where you're familiar with April, set up a farmer's market
Yeah.
after the grocery store was they turned into a food desert, which one of the characteristics of food deserts, some food deserts are low on oxygen. So think through all of that, helping with
Oh, definitely, because again, it increases the way we look at transportation and having different areas for us to have transportation. But also, I think what you're going to find is, as we get to the point where we're better at recognizing, you know, walking is more open, biking, you're going to find more people we're going to find more people who are actually embracing thinking outside the box, like what April's done. You know, a lot of people, and she'll probably say, you know, a lot of people are like, well, you're doing what? And you know, even now it's, you know, only on Wednesdays. I would love to see where that can be expanded. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How that can be expanded. And so, but you've got to get people thinking that it's not just having the Food Lion or the Piggly Wiggly in your neighborhood. Part of us having different ways to address our food insecurities is opening up our minds back to independent grocery stores. I'm not sure if y'all met, I think April knows him, but Brian Thomas, he opened a grocery store right on Fair Road. It's kind of same as April. His isn't a farmer's market. It is a grocery store, but he just partnered with Food Share. This week actually was his first week, and so now Food Share, yeah, so once a week Food Share is coming out and they're bringing fresh fruits and vegetables. But it's a great story. He took his stimulus money and he opened this grocery store because it's a food desert. So he has cereal, he has, you know, grits and pancakes. Doesn't have a huge commercial freezer, so we just were able to secure a grant from the city so that he could buy a commercial freezer so that he could start having some meats and stuff like that. But kind of the same thing, he saw a need in the community, and now there are people who walk and bike because they live in the neighborhood, and that's a lot easier for them to access than if they were, needing to go somewhere else. So I think that, and I tell people all the time, there's intersectionality in all these issues.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at, we want to be bicycle and pedestrian friendly. We have food deserts. We have, we have high rates of poverty in these areas. All these things we can have plans that address all these things together. But we've got to be willing to kind of look at how it all connects.
Right. It has that 101 feel that applying it to the real world in Colombia.
Yeah.
Obviously can have an understanding of.
Yeah, because even like BPAC and CPAC, I've been talking to the chairs of both of those about maybe quarterly them meeting together. Because when you're talking about climate protection and energy efficiency, of course it aligns with being more pedestrian and bike friendly, so that me, I like literally my commute every day, and of course I have a kid with a car seat, so it's a little bit different, but I literally my commute every day is a 7 minute from beginning to end, going to every place I have to do, from my house to City Hall to my office. It's all right here.
Yeah.
And so, like literally, I could, if I had more time, I could walk it. I definitely could bike it. If we had the facilities that made it easier and faster and safer.
Really good to hear that, Brittany.
I love Devine Street, but this is definitely, like, you think about, like, Devine Street is a place needed parking, and they took parking spaces, but Devine Street certainly is a street that I feel like, even in a car, I don't always feel safe. And so, with the shops and stuff, it seems like, when you go to other cities, this is a perfect street that would have more facilities, for to share the road and that kind of thing. I just don't know if it's...
From a personal standpoint, I live not that far away from you, and especially on an e-bike, like this is not a bad distance over if it was a pleasant, safe ride, I feel like. So maybe let's talk about that next, how you tie into economic development and business friendliness on kind of commercial neighborhoods.
Yeah, well, there are studies that already say, and we brought this up when we talked about Fair Road, but there are studies that already say that if you can slow down traffic, it will bring in businesses, because people are not zooming by and not like looking and saying, hey, look, that's a cute little boutique, let me go step in. So if you were able to have people who were biking and walking those corridors, it's a huge boom for
HLK 5052.
Then the other thing is you don't have to worry about all the silly regulations. I shouldn't say silly. All the regulations we have about parking when you're pulling your business somewhere, because you're not necessarily building it for people with cars. You're building it for any and everybody, and you're trying to encourage more people to actually come on their bikes or walk. So it's huge for economic development, but it's also, when you talk about urban planning, I mean, that's really the way you want to go. You want people to be able to have the density, but to enjoy more leisure, being out, enjoying outdoors. So it's huge for economic development, and that's why it's critical not only that we talk about developing the river, but that we expand the greenway. If we can expand the greenway, I can't wait until I can jump on my bike or go for a run right there on River Drive, right there at my house, and go all the way down to the Vista. We've done, and I have a friend that lives in Elmwood. We've done that before. Like, we've gotten, because Elmwood is closer to the overpass, so we've gotten, we've taken a walk and gone down to the Vista and got some ice cream with the kids, and then come back. And I mean, it's great. So I would say, just imagine if we were able, more people had that access, that you weren't, just right there by the greenway, but that you can jump over on Garner's Ferry and come all the way downtown and on your bike, and it'd be safe, and you can spend your money, and it'd be perfect.
like you're saying in Columbia, everything's pretty close by actually. Like just
It really is.
everything's nice and centralized for the most part.
Like Zach, you mentioned Charleston. Did you used to live in Charleston?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always in awe. Like I remember being at a conference and then going and getting in the car and going over, I think, to go shopping or go to dinner or something. And just, the bike lanes and, it was like when I thought how far where I was going was, I was like, oh. And then when I saw like somebody like biking almost the whole track, I was like, this actually would be really cool. And so it's a different, and Charleston is a little bit more spread out than we are. So if they can accomplish that, I mean, we certainly can.
Yeah,
I love this part too.
Different. I tell people even if it's like going to lunch after Charleston, after being walking out of the restaurant, a lot of times it's like in a car to go 3 blocks. Like that. But yeah, I guess we make one people do it in different snowballs.
It is. I mean, think back a lot of stuff we do, but like you think about recycling, and really again starting with the kids. Like, kids were taught, we need to recycle, we need to save the environment, and it caught on. My 16-year-old, her and her friends they're all about jumping on their bikes. They're all about, saving the environment. And so they push me a little bit more to do different things. And so I think and that's why I think I really want to do this kids, and it's not just for kids, but the bike park, because adults will probably go and they'll take their kids to that. And then once they take their kids, they're going to say, hey, I'm going to buy a bike so I can bike with my kids. And then you're going to start doing it as more of a family activity, but then you're going to realize, hey, this is kind of cool. I mean, I think it's just all about changing the comfort level people have, but also giving them a different experience. Yeah, and Emily Douglas Park, that's one of my favorite parks.
Where's the opportunity and
kids who actually have access to bikes. And I know the city police department does a really good job at, like, when there's lost or stolen bikes that don't get retrieved, they donate them to lower wealth communities. But I think increasing access to bicycles for young people is important. I think it's that learning how to ride a bike. I mean, we always talk about how kids these days, they don't go outside like they used to. And I talked about, my oldest, she was almost 10 before she learned how to ride. I've done better with my other two. But even now, I mean, so when we had her, we were the only family in the neighborhood with a kid. Everybody else were older, empty nesters. And now our neighborhood is so diverse. I love it. We have so many kids in our neighborhood now, which is perfect. It's not abnormal to see.
I think it doesn't change.
Oh, you gotta.
I'm gonna go push the button.
So there's more kids in our neighborhood, so it's not abnormal to see kids biking in the street. But like even now, the moms on our street, we'll stand in the middle of the street at the corners. We just got some slow down signs, but even my kids, on our street. Our street is people just zoom through our street. They cut through back and forth to North Main Street. So it's still not completely safe, but it's safer now because we'll put our bodies out there and that kind of stuff. But having that safety so that people feel comfortable to even teach their kids how to ride. We going all the way down, or are we turning?
We're gonna go down. Turn left on green.
Okay.
I should have asked earlier, but is it okay if I call you Miss Devine? Is that-
Come, it's Mika.
Okay.
Yeah. This wind is perfect.
Excuse me?
I said the wind is perfect.
Yeah.
I thought about that this morning when they said it was going to be a little bit windy this afternoon. I said, oh, that would be perfect. I brought my towel just in case, but I am definitely a sweater.
Breeze feels nice.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts on 5-point
For 5-point safety,
safety?
well, I would definitely say 5-point safety continues to be a huge priority for lots of reasons, but especially when you think about pedestrian. We've got to figure out now not only how to encourage more facilities, and I'm sorry, can y'all hear me? Because I feel like I'm screaming. Encouraging more facilities and encouraging more people to cross at the at the crosswalks. I know students don't always like to do that, but crossing at the crosswalk. But I think the whole village concept, part of the village concept is for it to be a walkable village. And at some points, I mean, it is. I don't have a problem with walking through 5 points, but I know a lot of folks who don't like to walk through 5 points. And so figuring out like what's going to make folks a little bit more apt to want to be out of cars, because I think we have way too many cars who come through 5 points and they speed through. Y'all might not realize this, but you see the stationary speed thing? There are neighborhoods that would kill for that. I want us to have more stationary speed ones, but we don't have that in most places. The reason it got to 5 points is because speed at 5 points is a huge issue. So having a little temporary one there and doing traffic enforcement for a little bit of time doesn't work. And so we had to do a permanent one there. So we got to figure out how do you slow down and make it safer for people to walk and have those crosswalks. I'm not sold on. I don't know if you've heard the plan about putting a barrier like all the way up so that you can't cross in the middle of the street.
Not either.
Yeah. But I understand the reason why they're proposing it is because, again, trying to encourage people to walk across the crosswalks that will be safer. But I think there's a better way to encourage that. We have to do some more enforcement. We have to do more education. We have to give people tickets when you see that they're not doing it. But I would like to see bike lanes, but I guess, and I'd love your answer, your thoughts on that. I'm just wondering if 5 points if that is an area that bike lanes would do well in, because I think you have with the university, with everything around, I think we can encourage more people to want to bike. But the question is, if Hardin Street continues to be like a speedway, it's not going to be safe.
Yeah.
Y'all think Hardin Street is a good street for bike lanes?
With its current surroundings, it's not the best. It's not the best place to spend money. Like more of the area around it needs to become like pedestrian friendly in terms of attitude and infrastructure before there's going to be enough people using it, like you said. But at the same time, maybe just getting a start on it, kind of introduces people to the idea of it. But
I'm not sure. I don't know if it was you, Zach, or it might have been David from the collective, but did I share with you the wave protected lanes that are not permanent. Did I share with you those?
I don't think so. What's that
Okay.
look like?
So, during COVID, or actually right before COVID, just to the point of the attitude part, in one of my National League of Cities meetings about, encouraging, more bicycle infrastructure and getting communities used to it before you actually go to, permanent facilities, etc. Some cities, what they're doing is they do a protected, some kind of barrier that can be moved, so you're not paying for the permanent infrastructure, and you can get a community used to it before you, pull the trigger on doing, more permanent facility. So I found these ones that they use in LA. I have a friend that is the president of council in LA, and so they're wave,
Like the PVC pipe looking stuff?
kinda, and it's a wave, yeah.
I think I know what you're talking
And
about.
so we bought some to test out. Okay, where are we going? Up or straight? Okay. Oops, let me get started. Oops, if I can get started. Getting started is always the hardest for me.
Yeah.
There we go. Homecoming. It says homecoming. It's homecoming.
Oh,
Yeah.
probably should. Oh, there's Bob. I thought it was like
I went to USC for law school, but I didn't go undergrad, so I'm honestly not a big homecoming type person. Everybody's like, "You're not coming to homecoming?" I'm like, "Nope." My husband went to Benedict, so their homecoming's next week, so I'll go to that one. But
Yeah.
So, I guess if you've been around Columbia, sometimes you progress here. Like I did do undergrad here.
You know, that night.
More days than 5 hours, so it's kind of expanded. How did that process go? Different because of the university, and how do you see similar projects working out in other areas?
that is funny that you asked that question, because so the progression of this predates me, but I had to research it because several years ago Benedict wanted to do the same with Oak Street, and it was a big uproar for the surrounding community, and the city did not allow it. And there was a lot of conversation about, well, the city let USC do it, why can't Benedict do it? There was never really a good answer on that. It was just very interesting. But I love the idea of having more pedestrian spaces, even on some of, not tied to a school or any kind of official facility. But even like you see Soda City on main streets, and what we've done, I think when BPAC has done, the open streets, and people can just have creativity. I mean, I've gone to different areas, different cities where there are just really great pedestrian areas that not only bring in economic development, but people are just out and having a good time. So I think we can do that a little bit more. That also is going to go back to what I was talking about, is the education. I just think people are so used to the way things are. People don't like, oh, this is the way I get to school every day. So no, I don't want you to close the street because it's gonna, you know, I'm gonna have to find a different route. So I think it's part of having a conversation with the community and making sure that people understand this is what a progressive city does. We have, you know, pedestrian villages. We have places where people can walk from one area to the city to the other and not have to compete with cars. We have where people can sit in the middle of the street and have lunch or coffee. You know, I've noticed a lot of that during COVID too, is how cities were shut down streets to allow restaurants to have complete outdoor dining areas. And so some of those areas have now become more permanent outdoor dining areas instead of just because you needed to do it because of the pandemic. Because people, they saw restaurant business increase, they saw more people out enjoying it, and so it was just a change. So I think how you do that is good as well, but it's part of that conversation.
What's the way of Columbia doing that, especially at the height of the pandemic when we saw such a drop in the vehicle traffic?
You know, so I don't know as a group, I had mentioned it, and actually Will Brennan and I had talked about it a couple times, but I reached out to the Vista Guild when I saw a lot of other cities were doing that. I said, hey, what do y'all think? Especially like with Lincoln Street and stuff there. I mean, there were really great already areas in Vista that you could have done that in to just try it out. And I think people were, at that point, they were just focused so much on their survival, kind of thinking outside the box on different things other than what they absolutely had to do because of COVID. I don't think a lot of folks were willing to have that conversation. But I think we're apt to have it now. Whoops. Sorry.
Before you know better. Make a left here.
I was wondering. I was like, because even with that, I mean, if y'all recall, with the university, a lot of these changes, there was a little pushback.
Yeah.
But at the most part, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was just saying it's there was a little pushback to a certain extent, but it wasn't a whole lot, and it got implemented, and then people got used to it. I think sometimes you got to do things, and then people will get used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole area with having a bike lane, having no left turns.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you have people who don't pay attention, and they will do it anyway. But for the most part, people adapt.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's one thing. I think we underestimate people's willingness or even ability to adapt.
Right.
Like, oh, we can't do that. Why? Why?
Point where there's that balance between we should just implement it and we still need more community awareness and feedback.
Yeah, and I think you can do it both at the same time sometimes. Like I said, like even with the temporary ones.
Yeah.
While people were getting used to it, we could continue to have a conversation.
Right.
And then, you know, some people are just, they have to see it. And so while you're implementing it, even on a temporary basis, you're giving people, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to affect. These are the benefits.
Yeah.
And so you're continuing. I think sometimes people think we have to talk about things to then do them. Yes, you want to have that you don't want to just launch something on people. I mean, I think the thing with Fair Road again was DOT just did it. The city was aware of it, but nobody in the city said, oh, wait a minute, we probably need to let DOT know who the stakeholders are. So now even with 5 Points, you see DOT is having all these great meetings, and I know that we don't always agree, like the median down Hard Street, but they're having the meetings and we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that's what should happen with Fair Road. But even with Fair Road, once it was done, really taken out maybe a commitment of we're gonna keep these for 3 months.
Right.
And during the 3 months, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have traffic control out here to monitor the use. Because the other thing, I think I said this before, but you know, people are like, people don't ride bikes up here.
Yeah.
I see people ride bikes all the time. They might not do, they might not do it down Farrell Road because they don't feel like it's safe.
Yeah, right.
And so if we were able to kind of have the data and the conversation, I know some folks over there who probably would have eventually embraced it, especially when you talk about wanting grocery stores and wanting this and wanting that. When you make that connection on how slowing down the traffic brings in, you know, more people who want to be, you know, who might want to put their business here, and that's what people want. You make that connection, I think they'll embrace it a little bit more too.
Makes sense.
What do you think it is that makes it seem like for you bike project? Car project. Like how is it such a different level to what kind of project?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I think that part of that probably depends on which entity's in charge and who's driving that conversation. And that's one of the things.
I know it's not all things.
Yeah. but I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it's a frustration that I've had too, because I do think that some of that keeps us back. I mean, it's just like even when I think about our bus system. Again, with now having a 4-year-old, I don't do the bus. It's just because it doesn't make sense because it takes me forever to get anywhere. But like the first time I ran for office, I actually took the bus for like 3 days just so I understood kind of what was going on and where it took me. And then after the comment was done and we did the penny, I did the same thing just to see what improvements had been made, everything else. And what I always share with people is, to me it's so funny when I look at, if you go to DC or New York, there's nothing for you to jump on a bus to get to where you have to go. Well, now everybody's trying to Uber, but before there was Uber and Lyft, people would jump on public transportation in a heartbeat. But people don't want to do it here. Okay, so in this way? This is the route I did the first time I did the blue bike.
What's that?
This is the route I did.
Blue bike brings that up.
Yeah.
I know you bring them some. How do you see the future of the investment, our city and region as a blue bike, and how that'll, where that ties into residents?
And I didn't hear the beginning. I know you said blue bikes.
Future expansion of the blue bike system in Columbia, and we'll work with the county and across the river, and how that can help both residents.
Oh yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the blue bike. I was one of the ones, along with the mayor, that pushed the blue bike. I pushed that whole process of doing the RFP. I have an actual good friend in Charleston again, who, she at the time was working with one of the companies that didn't get selected, but she and I had been on an international trip together, and we were talking about just the economics of having bike share programs. And I'd already seen it like in DC and stuff, but just seeing that, you know, bringing it here and working with Blue Cross to actually pull it in was exciting. But I do think we need to expand it. I've been excited sometimes when I'm like, because it's like sometimes you like see them and you see them sitting, but you don't see a whole lot of people on them, or you don't see people. And when I'm riding and I'll see somebody on the blue bike, I'm like, look, somebody's using the blue bike.
Yeah,
So I get so excited. So I think we're getting there. I think it's part of, again, having, hey, how are you? Having the blue bike increases people's access to it. But again, until we have the safe facilities, you're not going to get people to do it. You know, I'm going to rent a bike to get on Assembly Street to potentially, you know, get run over. And so I think it starts with the infrastructure. And I remember, so the group I went to Copenhagen with was a group called 880 Cities. Have y'all ever heard of them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
880 Cities?
Yeah. They do so many phenomenal things, but one of the things in our conversations was, and what they were saying is one of the big mistakes that cities make is cities say, we want to be bicycle and pedestrian friendly, and you know, we start the bike share, or we start, you know, talking about it without, one, the education, and two, the facilities. And so, you know, I think the bike share, we needed to get it done, but doing the bike share at a point where we don't have, you know, the greenway or that kind of stuff. Like if I do see people riding it, and when I get excited is people see that it's not riding it on the greenway. I've seen people ride it on the greenway because it's right there, but I haven't seen as many people riding it to get to and from work or something else, because again, we don't have the facilities to make it safer. And I know it keeps going back on facilities, but that's what I'm excited about, finally being able to expand the greenway. But the greenway is only part of it. We've got to do the lanes. And once we start doing them, I think people will get comfortable with them, and then you keep adding and adding and adding. And then once you get more people, then I think you expand the whole blue bike system. And I think we've got some blue bikes near a comment station. I know there was that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I meant like out in the neighborhoods. I don't think there's any in like neighborhoods, but I think that there are some in other places. And I think as Blue Cross looks at the data, you're going to find that if we do that too, because you're kind of look at where the need is too, and you've got a lot of folks who, you know, would bike to the bus stop and then take the bus to work, and it just makes the whole trip a little bit more enjoyable. And I don't know if they're waiting until they change the whole comment system to have more of the spoke system, but I know they've talked about that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that
Yes, I heard they have an excellent person in mind. They're trying to convince that person to leave where they currently are. I think that person would be great. Yeah. He really did, and he really lived that system too. He was on my affordable housing task force, because again, talking about the intersectionality of issues, you know, I was like, we can't talk about affordable housing and the needs of residents if we don't talk about transportation. So he was on there. He was a great asset. Since he's left, Pam Bado Reed is on it, and so she's great. She's only been there like 2 months or 3 months or something on our task force, so she hasn't given a lot of input, but I think John was a really big picture type person. Even looking at, you know, the Proterra buses and, you know, how do we make sure our system is a lot better. I love this green light. I just wish we could get
Greenway is fast. And thinking of the River Greenway, not this one. I noticed West Columbia Casey, especially Casey, has done a really good job at connecting neighborhoods to their side of the Greenway. And I think we have one.
Yeah.
But where do you see some of the opportunities for connecting residents to the Greenway without having to get in a car and drive down to the park?
Yeah. I mean, I think we definitely have to connect the Vista Greenway down to the river. And I think a big part, just doing this piece over here in North Columbia, right here you've got Elmwood, Earlwood, Cottontown, Hyatt Park. All of them are fairly close to be connected. You might remember there's some conversations a couple years ago about the Garner's Ferry piece of it and the neighborhoods over there. And it was going to go right behind neighborhoods, and you know, some neighborhoods didn't want the trail behind their house, and so that didn't go, so that didn't go much further. But I think, I know, but I think there's opportunities, because when you think about it, again, Casey especially, I know a few folks who live in that neighborhood right there by the Casey Riverwalk, and they love it. And so, you know, I think it's part of that is doing. I think, to John's point before, is sometimes you talk, but you also kind of start doing. Because I do think that you will have a certain amount of folks who are just not used to it, and so they don't know. It's just that sometimes the fear of the unknown, not knowing, you know, what it's going to look like, what does it mean to my safety of my community, what does it mean to property values. And so I think having those conversations, but not letting it stop moving forward, because first of all, the cost of doing it goes up. Like I just had Missy give me the numbers now that we finally secured this property over here on Main Street. Give me the numbers, and they just were able to estimate it. And just in the last 3 years, you know, of course in the last year, construction costs are crazy. But if you look at the expansion of the Greenway now, it's a lot more than it was a few years ago. And so it's like, when you wait, it's going to cost the public more money, and it's a public amenity. So, so I think there's lots of opportunities, and I know a lot of people who want it. We just have to, I think, push forward to it. And I think that goes to, again, my equitable and inclusive growth. When you think about growing our city, growing it is not just thinking about growing in population or even, you know, bringing in business, but it's the quality of life aspect, and what enhances the quality of life for people who live in the city of Columbia, and to be able to be connected to, I mean, how many cities have rivers? How many cities can say you and your family can go for a leisure bike ride on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon and not hit a street, because you've got these great bike paths throughout your city? That's huge when you think about economic development and quality of life.
Yeah, I love the Greenway on both sides. I do it a lot more on the other side, because that's my route to work. But I mean, my wife has to go over there, because we can't get to the other side of the river.
And does she bike as much as you do?
Oh, no, not nearly as much. She's done a lot more work since we got that bike. And I mean, you know, those are some small things, like riding the curve, or going to, like Soap City, stuff like that, but she's not doing like a 10-mile ride.
And when you go to Soda City, where do you put your bike?
Just find a bike ride.
Okay. We had talked about that one time, because my husband has like a little carriage in the back for the baby, and so the girls wanted to bike to Soda City one day, and I knew that there were, I think there's a bike rack in the Pete Cannon garage, but that was my big thing. I was like, where are we going to put these bikes? And I'm not about to watch these kids' bikes because they want to go to the thing. So we ended up walking, which was fine. But
yeah, I've done one at City Hall.
Yeah.
There's one on the 1600 block. Actually, I think maybe two, like right around the edge.
Oh yeah,
And
right. Yeah, right there by
the
the
Good Life
Nick and
Cafe.
in the main course. Yeah, there's one right there.
Yeah, those are both for us. Alright, so we're coming up on the tail end now. We'll continue kind of an open mic time till the end. If there's anything we hit on that you'd like to share, we're going to send this out to our email list and Facebook group. So I think a little over 1,000 people.
Sure. Hey. Good. I guess, yeah, okay, open mic. You tell an elected official, open mic. But no, first of all, I want to say thank y'all because this was fun. It got me back out on the bike. Hadn't been on a bike since COVID. Well, when we were all locked down. When I had to go back to work, the bike went back up. So this was fun. But I guess for me, I would say I, as a current member of City Council, recognize the city has not done all we can as far as improving our biking facilities. Part of that is, I think, not, part of it is resources, and not having a whole lot of money to do things that some people consider a luxury versus, part of our quote infrastructure, bridges, roads, etc. But number one, if you're going to be doing bridges and roads, you can't plan them without planning for the future and including bike lanes. So I think that's definitely got to be something that we make sure that we're continuing to do. But I also would say I am excited. I know people laugh. They feel like some of my friends say I act like a kid at Christmas time and I have this wish list of all this stuff. But I mean, regardless of how much money gets passed in the American Jobs Plan, it is going to be more money than we have seen in my lifetime to implement some of the things that are so important. And so I think right now we gotta make sure that we are strategic about our plans and making sure that we're maximizing that money and investing it in a way that helps us get to where we need to be, because we might not see this opportunity again, and the window in this opportunity may be really, really short. And so what I want to do is make sure that we're thinking about, as we think about, hey, growth of our city, we're also thinking about how do we implement not just the plan that we already have on the shelf, but expanding that plan to think about how do we make Columbia the place that encourages more people to want to live here, and encourages people to get out of their cars. Because if we're going to actually do what we need to for our environment, we got to get to the point where we got more people outside their cars. We got people enjoying not just bikes, but walking. But the only way we're going to do that is if we feel like it's safe to do so. Open mic last little word.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Oh.